Hi, I clicked on to today's tropical tidbit for Monday. Here's the current sea surface temperature anomalies for the world. Here we are a month ago, strong La Nina going in the Pacific. Here we are today. Notice the weakening of the cold anomalies going on in the Central Pacific. Warm tongues starting to show up in the far eastern Pacific, and this is generally a sign that La Nina is starting to weaken. We're also getting some warming in the northeast Pacific here, indicating a weakening of the cold PDO signal. This is something that people are starting to talk about now. Is La Nina going away? You can see Niño 3.4 data over here has been going down, and now it's starting to kick back up just a little bit over here. Will be interesting to see how far this goes, or if it spikes back down, or how far this tries to go up. The big one, though, is the Niño 1 and Niño 2 regions in the far eastern and Pacific now going positive over here over the last few weeks. And when these things go up, it can signal the demise of a La Nina, but not always, though. I want to show you a couple of times during multi-year La Ninas in the past where this doesn't necessarily mean that they just go away and die right away. A lot of times they can, but in patterns like this, when the PDO is negative, you can often get multi-year La Ninas that weaken during the spring, but then come roaring back the following winter. If we look at the Oceanic Niño Index for previous years, one of the multi-year La Ninas that's famous in history is the one back in the 1950s over here. You can see the first one wasn't that strong, 1954, 1955, but if we look at when it really spiked in 1955, went all the way down to -2, -1.9 here in December of that year. Notice how much it dropped off in just 1 month. The 3-month average dropped by rose rather by 0.6 and got warmer, and really it got warm in February and March here, and but it maintained a weak La Nina state through the summer, and then through the next winter remained rather cool before finally becoming an El Nino in 1957. So it warmed up a lot here, but a rapid warm-up doesn't necessarily mean that it just drops off, and we maintained a cool signal through the hurricane season, which is going to be important for considering the Atlantic this year and how our hurricane activity shapes up. If we go down now to the next big famous multi-year La Nina, look here in the 1970s. Here's 1973. Notice the big dip here towards -2, -2.1 in December. Notice January starts dropping off, February dropping off, March starting to really warm up, and you can see that continue warming up right into the summer over here, and it looks like it's going to start going away right on the edge of neutral here, but then notice it starts to re-strengthen, and during the following winter it maintains a cool signal and right into next year, and then the following winter, and then maintains a cool signal for the following almost 2 years before it finally comes out to a warm phase during the Great Pacific Climate Shift of 1976. So again, you can see that the drop off through the summer doesn't necessarily mean that it goes away. Another one I want to show you is 1999. If we go over here to by the end of February, early March in 1999, look what was going on. Very similar to now, a warm tongue coming up the west coast of South America into the eastern Pacific, Niño 1 and 2 regions, warming up nice and toasty over here. You can see the cool anomaly starting to weaken in the central Pacific, and again here I bet people were probably thinking that this La Nina was starting to die. If we go over to June here, you notice very weak cold anomalies in the Pacific. This was all the way up to, let's see, where was this? In June it was all the way up to -0.8 here. A very weak La Nina at this point. But then notice, if we go all the way out to the end of the year, all of a sudden our La Nina is back, and it started re-strengthening down to -1.6 or something for the following winter in 2000. This is another multi-year La Nina that occurred after the Super Nino of 1997-98. So again, notice the pattern is similar to now. Warm water starts showing up, indicates the demise of the La Nina, but it may just weaken and then come fighting back the following winter, especially when the PDO is negative out here in the North Pacific. You got to watch for these things to try to last for more than 1 year at a time. It'll be interesting to see if this is one of those La Ninas that will try to persist, or whether it will actually go away and reverse again, and we'll get another El Nino coming along. Chances are that it won't be a very long-lived El Nino if it does come on, because of the PDO again being negative, meaning that La Ninas are going to start becoming the more dominant phase of the ENSO here in the equatorial Pacific as time goes on. One more thing that I was noticing is if we go back here to March of 1999, notice the pattern over here in the Atlantic: warm water near the coast, warm Gulf Stream, cooler in the tropics, in the deep tropics over here. This is a pattern that's very typical of La Niñas during the winter. We saw this in 2008 as well. Very warm near the coast of the United States, cool down here. Takes a lot of effort to reverse that before the hurricane season gets going, because this doesn't favor a whole lot of activity except homegrown mischief. But look at what we've got going here. The opposite pattern of this: warm water in the tropics, cool near the United States. Ironically, this is the exact same pattern that we've had going last year at this time when we had an El Nino in the Pacific, which does favor this pattern over here. Shows how odd this La Nina has been in the pattern over North America, and the Atlantic has been more typical of El Nino winters. The more recent image shows a little bit of warming up starting to go on here as the southeast U.S. warms up during the next few weeks. Expect waters here to warm up and not be as cold. The trade winds increasing over the eastern Atlantic means that the waters here may start to cool a little bit. So what the pattern is going to be doing is trying to go more towards this over here. I don't know how far it's going to get, because unlike most La Nina winters, it's starting to reverse extremely late, near the tail end of the winter. So it'll be interesting to see how far this gets before the hurricane season begins. Notice the loop current showing up very strong here in the Gulf of Mexico. Gulf Stream very well pronounced. This shows that the Atlantic multidecadal oscillation is still very strong and positive, pumping warm water in the deep water currents up this side of the Atlantic, which means that either way, this is going to warm up. The key is going to be how much does this cool down here from the eastern Caribbean eastward to Africa, will be the key to the start of this hurricane season, and whether we can keep any kind of a cool dipole anomaly up here to help focus upward motion in the tropics for the start of the hurricane season. So we will be watching that very closely, along with the La Nina in the Pacific, to see if this lasts for a while or whether it just goes away and we flood the Pacific with warm water here over the coming months. It'll be very interesting to watch, and we shall see what happens. Alright, that's it for today. Thanks for watching.